Hello, everybody. My name's Simon Wheatcroft, and when I give these talks in person, it's usually quite obvious that I'm blind because I do have a guide dog with me. So, to add a bit of context around that label blind, I retain light perception, and I was actually born with vision. But as I aged, my vision deteriorated. I initially lost peripheral vision, it then closed in, and then you begin to lose things like acuity. So I lost things like face detection, the ability to read, until I was left with only light perception. So that's a little about my sort of visual history. But today I'm here to talk about accessibility. And accessibility to me means equal opportunities, equal access to data, to information, and what opportunities that can actually lead to. So my story today revolves around that. And one of the big issues for blind people is around mobility. So mobility is a blind person who generally use something like a guide cane or a guide dog or a piece of technology. So I thought, can I push the boundaries of sort of what's considered possible with mobility and go out and do some running alone? Now, interestingly, around this point in time, there was an app released on the iPhone called Runkeeper. And this was the first time running information was made accessible. So no longer do I look at a screen to find out how far I've gone or how fast. Now it all comes through audio, which is fantastically accessible for a blind person. So armed with the single piece of information, how far have I gone, I decided to head outside and learn to run alone. So I started on a football pitch. I positioned myself between some goalposts and just ran up and down the football field. Every so often the audio would kick in, tell me how far I'd run. So obviously you can get pace information from that. So fantastic. This was the first time I'd ever gone out training alone. So no cane, no guide dog, just using this single piece of data. Now on that football pitch, I managed to train up to be able to run a mile, which was a fantastic achievement and the furthest I'd ever managed to run. But then it started to get a little too dangerous. And that was thanks to the dog walkers. They assumed I could see. I assumed they would move. It was time to find somewhere slightly safer. So around this point in time, I lived near an airport. Interestingly, the airport infrastructure was never quite finished. So that meant closed roads. So I could go onto a closed road. There would be no cars, no pedestrians, no dog walkers. So on this closed piece of road, I continued to use Runkeeper. And what I started to do now was pair that single piece of data with what it felt like underfoot. So I would use the WL lines to run up and down. And then whenever I felt some sort of grates, so that the storm drains underfoot, it would trigger 0.3 miles. So I started to think to myself, I wonder if I compare these distance markers with what it feels like to underfoot and learn to run the open road. So one day I run up and down the closed road to build up some confidence. I step out onto the dual carriageway at the top of the road. I tell myself the cars move and I run down the side of the road. Thankfully, there were WL lines I could follow. So get to the bottom of the road. Can't believe what I've done. Turn around, run back to the closed road, and then my wife picks me up. And she's not the wiser to what I've been doing. So now my wife would drop me off at this closed road. I started the process of learning to run the open road with the feeling underfoot and the distance markers. So WL lines, if there were no WL lines, I'd use the pavement. The pavement's arc. So if the pavement arcs, one foot ends up higher than the other, so you can get a sense of drifting. Sometimes there'll be bushes on one side, perhaps grass on the other, so again, you get that sense of drifting. In terms of knowing when to turn left and right around the streets, I'd use the dips in the pavement with the distance markers and learn to turn left or right. So this, it turns out, worked incredibly well. Obviously, with only one data point, there are a few issues, things like traffic lights, lampposts, road signs, trees. The only way you do find them is by running into them. But you learn where they are, you make sure you're at the side of the pavement next time. So with this method, I managed to memorize a 10-mile route. Sorry, memorized a 3-mile route, but I was running 10 miles in total. So now I started to think, well, you know, I've come a long way from the football pitch to here. Perhaps now it's about time I enter a race. So I entered my first ever race, and that race was 100 miles. So from learning to run to race day was a 6-month training block, which is quite compressed. But if we fast forward to race day, blind people don't compete solo. What you do is you use a guide runner. They run alongside, you hold onto their elbow, or you can tether with a rope or just run alongside them, and they guide you along the route. So I had 20 people that would work in pairs, 10 miles each. We would run the route together. Now the race that would turn out was in the Cotswolds. I'd been training at an airport, which is flat. The Cotswolds, it turns out, is incredibly hilly. Never run a hill before in my life. Turns out running up hills is a lot harder than running on the flat. So after 50 miles, I was emotionally and physically just broken. So after a good old cry and eating some food to try and cheer me up, I thought to myself, do I really want to quit, or do I want to see just how far I can go? So I thought, let's see how far we can go. I'm happy to fail. The only way you're going to fail is if you can no longer stand. So I ran for another 33 miles for a total of 83 miles until I could no longer stand. I was removed from the race, but it stood as a fantastic achievement. This one piece of data, it allowed me to learn to train solo, run my first ever race, cover a total of 83 miles. Incredible achievement. So I continued to train, continued to compete at lots of different distances. And then I got the opportunity to run the New York City Marathon. Now, Runkeeper was developed in Boston, so I thought, wouldn't it be nice to run from Boston to the start of the New York Marathon and then run the marathon? So that in total is 260 miles. And the way we did that was using social media. So if anyone happened to live nearby, they could actually my guide runner and help me run between these two cities. It turned out to be an incredible adventure. Hundreds of people helped me run between city and city. And I finished my first ever marathon after running sort of 230 odd miles to get there. And it was a wonderful achievement. So this one piece of data, how far I had run, it enabled me eventually to run 260 miles. So we returned home, and then I started to think, I wonder what I could do if I had 2 pieces of data. So I thought to myself, with 2 pieces of data, perhaps we could come up with a way to compete solo. So I thought I need the right location. The right location for blind persons, of course, the desert, because there's nothing to run into. So I found a race in the desert. So I called it the race organizer. Said, hi, I want to enter your race. One slight wrinkle. I am blind. She said, no problem, bring a guide. And I said, I'm not going to bring a guide. I've got this incredible piece of technology. It does all the navigation. She was like, that's fantastic. Of course you can enter. Incredible. So I hung up the phone, couldn't believe she believed the lies. I had absolutely no technology, but I did have 9 months. So I committed to the training. 9 months turned into 6 months, still no technology. 6 months turned into 3 months, still no technology. But around this time, I did manage to partner with IBM. And together we came up with this concept of navigating on 2 data points. So the 2 data points is your current GPS location. It is that location within a virtual corridor. So what we did is create a piece of technology that you could create a virtual corridor within any given physical space. And if you deviated from this virtual corridor, it would use beeps to bring you back into a virtual corridor. So if the system was silent, you knew you were running in the correct direction. As soon as it makes a noise, you know you've gone wrong, you need to drop back in to this virtual corridor. So with 3 months to develop such a system, you make a few key assumptions. 1, the course never changes. And 2, there's no obstacles in a desert. So if we fast forward to race day, there's usually a race briefing before the race. And at the end of the briefing, I heard the race organizer say, and we've changed the course. I'm thinking that's going to be a problem. I hard coded this into the app. Can't really deal with a change of course. So we quickly spoke to the race organizer. It would turn out what they've done is for the first 6 miles, they'd actually moved the course sort of 400 meters to the right out of our virtual corridor. So now rather than navigate on silence, now I had to navigate on beeps. So for the first 6 miles, I basically followed a particular frequency on the beeps. I then stepped back into the virtual corridor and then stayed within the virtual corridor for the rest of the day. So on day one in the desert, I managed to cover the marathon distance unaided, becoming the first blind person to compete solo. And that was thanks to just 2 accessible data points. Now, when I entered this race, the insurance company got a bit panicky that I was going to be on my own. So they suggested I needed a ghost runner. So a ghost runner basically keeps you in line of sight. So if anything happens, they intervene, make sure you're safe. So on day 2, we head back out and I'm running through the desert. All of a sudden, take a really big blow to the face, hit the deck. The ghost runner comes over. He says, "Are you okay?" I said, "What happened?" He said, "You ran into a flagpole." I said, "How many flagpoles are there?" He says, "Oh, there's just one." In 800 kilometers of desert, I'd managed to find the only flagpole. So I cried for a little bit, stood back up, carried on, finished for the day. So day 3 was much of the same. You know, desert's essentially quite boring when you're blind. You know, I can't see anything. There's no real scent. There's no real smell. There's no real sound. It's basically sensory deprivation with a lot of heat. But on day 3, we head back out. So again, running through the desert, and every so often there'd be an aid station where you could get more water. So I stop, I get some water. And the race organizer happens to tell me, "Simon, you know, there's a rock field next." I'm like, "Rock field?" She went, "Yeah, 3 miles of rocks." I was like, "No one told me there was a rock field when I entered this race." And she went, "Yeah, there's a rock field." I was like, "Oh, okay." So we head out, and as I approach the rock field, the ghost runner comes over. He says, "Simon, this looks bad, really bad." I said, "Well, how bad is bad?" He said, "Well, the rocks are the size of your fist, up to a loaf of bread, density of sprinkles on a donut." It says, "There is no way you're going to get a clean step." I said, "Well, let's give it a shot." So we head into the rock field. It would turn out that ghost runner was absolutely right. I could not get a clean foot because the rocks aren't like paving slabs, you know, evenly spaced and flat. There were strange angles, sharp edges, so you hit them because I can't see where I'm placing my feet and basically scrape and twist and things. And I ended up scraping all the skin off the bottom of my left foot. And about halfway through, I actually got my left foot stuck. I twisted it as I pulled out. The pain was intense and immediate. I was starting to black out from the pain. It was scary at that point in time, but after a while, I managed to calm down. And essentially, no one could come and get you in the middle of a rock field. So you have to get out. So I do limp out. I do finish for the day. And I tell myself, if I can stand up tomorrow, I'll head back out and carry on. So I head back out the next day. You know, again, it's a desert, much the same. We come to another rock field. So the ghost runner comes over and said, "Simon, it's just as bad as last time. I don't think you can do it." I says, "Well, you know, let's head on in there." So head on in, but the pain by now is just too much. So I stand there and I think, you know, why did I come to this desert? I came to this desert to prove that a blind person could do this solo. I did that on day 1. I did that on day 2. I did that on day 3. All I was doing now was taking more damage to add to the miles. So I made the really difficult decision to quit and then drop out of the race. Now, you do still have to sort of stay in the desert till the race ends, but I did stay in the desert for a few more days and then return to the UK. Again, you know, I get to look back on just how far I've come now with 1 data point, training solo, 2 data points, competing solo. But now, back in the UK, like I say, in a lot of pain still. It takes 3 months so I can move freely. It would turn out I'd actually torn the muscles in my where the IT band connects to your lower leg. So I'd lost lateral movement in my leg. But after 3 months, pain-free, let's train again. So I head back out to where I used to train, down at the airport. First run out, after 10 minutes, I call my wife and all I say is, I'm hurt, it's bad. You've got to find me. So she comes looking for me. There's a trail of blood that leads to me. And it would turn out someone had dumped a burnt out car in the middle of the road. I did not see it, so I ran straight into it, went into my shin, went into my knee, opened up my right knee. You instinctively put your arms out. So I put my arms out, it went into my right arm and sliced down my right arm. So after getting stitched up at the hospital, I started thinking to myself, maybe it's time we added a third data point. We can't keep running into flagpoles, and we certainly can't keep on running into these burnt out cars. So now what I needed was an object detection system. Is there currently something in front? So the concept was a chest mounted device that would send out a ping. If the ping comes back, you would know there was an obstacle there. If the quicker it comes back, the closer the object. So we sort of converted that into vibrations on the chest. So the closer the object, the higher the vibration, the further away, the lower the vibration. So again, I teamed up with another technology company. This time they were based in Brooklyn. So we continue to refine my initial concept from IBM and this new object detection system to give us our 3 data points. Is there an object in front? My current location, is that within our virtual corridor? So we refined the system. We thought, we need to test this somewhere fun, somewhere with lots of moving objects, somewhere with lots of static objects. Why don't I just enter the New York City Marathon? There's 50,000 other runners. You've got to navigate a route. This could be really fun, interesting challenge. So if we fast forward to race day, the cannon fires for the start of the race, and then the rain begins. Not to worry, you step under a bridge to start with. I'm not going to get too wet. However, this is prototype technology. We're still a ways off this being finished. And unfortunately, the navigation system, so the virtual corridor system, fails on the bridge. Bit of an issue, but now we do still have that one single data point. Is there currently something in front? So I think to myself, well, why don't I see just how far I can go with this one piece of data? So now I'm running, and what I would do is I would find a runner in front. I would lock onto a particular level of vibration, hold it, and just follow that runner around. If I wanted to overtake, I would move left or move right, wait for the vibration to drop, run forward, then drop in front of them, find the next runner, and continue. So this worked incredibly well. The fact there was now 50,000 runners actually helped, because now I had so many runners I could always lock onto. And when we were moving left or right around the course, the crowd of runners would move. So I would know to move left or right, and it worked incredibly well. But the rain continued. And now at mile 15, this had become an issue, because now I could no longer distinguish between, is this a person in front, or is this the rain messing with our sensors? So unfortunately at mile 15, I did have to abandon the technology and resort to using the guide runner to finish the race. But to this day, I am still the only blind person to train solo, competed in a city marathon solo. And of course, if I'd have entered the New York City half marathon, I would have got to the end, but I entered the full marathon, so didn't quite get to the end. But just making really simple piece of information accessible has enabled me to do incredible things that I wouldn't have thought were possible sort of 6, 7, 8 years ago. In fact, I didn't think I'd run the New York City Marathon solo like 3 years ago. But that's all thanks to information being transformed, translated into something accessible. So that's what the power of accessibility is. If we level the playing field, the opportunities for everybody just increase. So that's my story. I'm happy to answer any questions around accessibility, those particular pieces of technology. Also, I do have quite a background in working in lots of different areas of accessible technology. So if you have some more general questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.